Today here at Robert's Guitar Dungeon, we're talking about the 8 worst guitars ever. I mean ever. Well, maybe not ever, but here's 8 really, really bad ones. I recently put up a video about some of the worst pedals that I have ever run across, and unfortunately some of the fuzz fanatics out there lost their minds over my inclusion of the ZVEX Fuzz Factory. Hopefully this list will not be quite as confidential, but these lists are always fun to do, and there's some real gems on here, in my opinion, that hopefully we will all get some entertainment out of. So let's get to it. Number 8, Peavey AT100 Auto-Tune Guitar. This guitar, I believe, is actually still in production. The AT100 was designed to be an alternative, seemingly anyway, to the robot guitars that Gibson have been putting out in recent years, except this one didn't actually have a mechanical detune function on it. This guitar actually has a built-in effect that would allow you to dial in various different tunings, very similar to that of a drop tune pedal of some kind. So while the guitar itself would still be in standard tuning, you could actually change the signal that was being sent out from the guitar to half step down or drop C or whatever it may be. However, the problem is the effect itself just wasn't very good, and if you were sitting down playing at bedroom levels, it became very, very confusing to the user's ear because the acoustic sound of the guitar itself was still playing in standard. Meanwhile, what was coming out of the amp was an entirely different tuning, and it just didn't go over well. The other thing that I noticed when these guitars came out new was they weren't exactly the greatest built guitars in the world either. They were notorious for having sharp frets and bent necks, and I even ran across a couple of them that the necks weren't even set straight. So the strings were essentially lopsided from the fretboard. These guitars, brand new, were about $4.99. I believe they're still selling new for about $4.49, and ironically, they seem to be bringing somewhere in about the $300 range on the used market. Go figure. Number 7, Ibanez RGK P6 with Kaoss pad. Now, I just did a video on another Ibanez guitar that I'm very fond of, and I'm a big Ibanez fan, especially with some of the products that they're putting out here in the last several years. I love Ibanez, and I'm on board. But this one was a huge miss. If you're not familiar with the Kaoss pad essentially is a DJ / studio piece of gear that will I don't even know how to describe how it works. You run your finger over the screen and it makes all kinds of weird, crazy noises that you might find in electronic music and stuff like that. Well, this guitar actually had one built onto the body. Bolted straight on there, right there onto the top of the body, just behind and below the bridge. So I guess the idea would have been to play and then do some goofy stuff on the Kaoss pad, and and maybe some of, I don't know. Most guitar players that I know, even if they do have an interest in that kind of gear as well, it would have made a lot more sense if guitar players had 3 arms. The other downside of this guitar is if you actually walked into a guitar store that carried it and you wanted to buy one off the wall, chances are you were going to get a huge discount because the Kaoss pad had already been stolen out of it, and it was a great big cavity on the front of the guitar with a bunch of wires hanging out of it. Not one of Ibanez's better ideas. Number 6, the Kramer Gorky Park guitar. If you're not familiar with Gorky Park, they were a glam metal band that came out in the late 80s, early 90s out of Russia. And they actually gained a little bit of popularity over here in the United States. Had a couple of hit songs, and just before the point in history when the Berlin Wall came down and communism fell and Russia rose back to power over the Soviet Union, was right around when this guitar came out. So even politically, I'm not sure that the timing on this thing was all that great, but they did seemingly try to bridge the gap between the U.S. and Russia of that time. But as far as the guitar itself goes, this thing was just absolutely hideous, with a actual equilateral triangle shaped guitar with Russian and American stickers and logos and stuff all over it, and it just why? This guitar wouldn't have been on this list had it been any other shape. Number 5, Gibson Firebird X. Oh, Gibson and your robot guitar antics. This one was a colossal failure. I believe these were originally released as a limited edition guitar of about 1,000 or so of each color, and they came in a very attractive red and a very attractive blue color. But they were called the Firebird X. The shape of the actual Firebird guitar on these not only was a little off from your traditional Firebird shapes, but this one, of course, also had the robot tuners on it. But the biggest failure on this guitar was the weird Bluetooth effect system that it had with it. This thing actually came with a separate case that had its own like multi-effects pedal board that connected to the guitar via Bluetooth, and was next to it, and everything was controlled via the foot switches on the floor and on the guitar in front of you, and it was a nightmare to scroll through menus to get the effects that you wanted, much less get the actual effects set to the way that you wanted it to sound, much less actually be able to use it, switch back and forth, turn those things on and off in an actual real life guitar playing setting, be it in the studio or live or whatever. These things were very, very difficult to use, and they also had their own separate charger, that had proprietary charger that came with it. And if you lost that thing, I'm sure it was not inexpensive to replace from Gibson. The store that I was working at the time received 4 of these brand new when they came out, 2 red ones and 2 blue ones. 1 year later, the store that I was working at sent back 4 of them, 2 red ones and 2 blue ones, the exact same 4 that we received when they first came out. These things were $4,000 brand new. We didn't sell a single one, and most of the other stores that I'm aware of didn't sell a single one either. If you look on the used market today, there are still dealers out there that got stuck with these things trying to get $3,000 or more out of them. This was not one of Gibson's shining moments. Number 4, Kramer Duke guitar. Right around the time back in the 80s when the Steinberger headless guitars came out, along came the Duke. And while it is said that this thing was not intended to be a takeoff of the Steinberger headless guitars, which had been very, very successful at that point in time, this apparently was its own amalgamation. However, this thing was the ugliest version of a Steinberger looking guitar that you could ever imagine. No headstock, which is fine, but it had the tuner keys bolted down to the bottom of the guitar and spread out to where it just looked like a huge mess, almost like what a modern day Traveler guitar might look like. Not only that, but the Duke guitars also had the famous Kramer aluminum neck from that time period, and the Steinberger guitars that they were apparently competing with at that time, one of the benefits of those guitars is they were extremely lightweight. A solid aluminum neck on a Kramer Duke guitar was anything but lightweight. These things were an abomination of the guitar industry back in the 80s. Number 3, anything Esteban. If you're not familiar with the Esteban guitars, I bet you probably are, just don't realize it. If you're up late watching TV and don't have anything on to watch and you're bored out of your mind, an infomercial, a guitar infomercial has rolled along, chances are it's probably our good buddy Esteban peddling his insanely cheap, crappy guitars on the unknowing public. I've had my hands on several of these over the years. Trust me, these are the cheapest, most garbage acoustic guitars out there on the planet. Esteban himself is actually a pretty accomplished Spanish acoustic guitar player, and he uses his guitar playing skills on these infomercials to sell his absolutely cheap garbage acoustic guitar players to the unknowing public, who are primarily beginners who simply would not know any better. He's charging hundreds of dollars for these absolutely garbage guitars. They sound terrible, they don't stay in tune, most of them won't intonate because the scale and the fret placement along the fretboard is incorrect. These things are worth about 30 or 40 bucks on the used market. They feel like they're made out of cardboard, literally, and that's about how good they sound, by the way. I've seen them sell for about 30 or 40 bucks on the used market, and I wouldn't pay that much for one, even if I was going to get to smash it. Number 2, Gibson Reverse Flying V. Number 1, First Act Volkswagen guitar. You might remember these, and if you don't remember them, I believe Volkswagen actually ran a promotion that involved this guitar, which is how they became well known. If you bought a particular Volkswagen back in the mid-2000s, not only did you get the card, but you also got a free First Act guitar with the new car. And I want to say that the car even had a built-in amplifier installed somewhere in the back of it. But they actually sold pretty well, and how Gibson let him get away with this, I don't know. But none other than Slash himself was seen all over on TV on their commercials during football games, and any other time they could think to put that commercial up on the air, was actually playing this guitar, and that alone sold a ton of them, I'm sure. The guitar itself, however, is absolutely horrible. I've ran into several of them on the used market, and while First Act actually does make some pretty high-end and pretty nice guitars, this isn't one of them. They're actually more well known these days for the beginner packs that you see in the Walmarts of the world selling all over the place, and this guitar really is about on par with one of those. Sharp frets, absolutely terrible electronics, you know, weighed about 4 pounds on a good day, so it had absolutely no tone to it whatsoever. It's just an absolutely terrible, crappy guitar. It's kind of an insult to guitar players that Volkswagen would give away a garbage guitar like this to its customers. So if you're a guitar player and a Volkswagen driver, I don't know, maybe some people out there did like them, but the general consensus is that they're terrible. Just before I sat down to shoot this video, I decided to look and see what these things were going for online, and some of them were selling up around the $300 range or a little less. However, the cheapest one that I saw, I think, was selling for about 99 bucks, and that's about what it's worth. When trying to get more into the mainstream guitar scene, better luck next time, First Act. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. You can also hit the little bell icon of when I upload new videos every Wednesday and Saturday morning. Any and all of the gear discussed in this video will be listed down in the description. And please leave me a comment. Let me know what your least favorite, worst guitar ever might be, even if there's multiple. This is always fun stuff to talk about. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. You know what? There are tons of young people out there that want to get involved in music and do not have the means to do so. If you are watching this video, most likely you're a musician, and many experienced musicians have tons of broken and unwanted gear lying around that they're not doing anything with. Please visit my friends at Share the Music on Facebook at the link below and learn how you and your unwanted gear can help change somebody's life.